Come on. Oh, goodness. Oh, my back. Oh, God, yeah, okay, I'm back. Yep, well, here's what's weird. This time it didn't crash. I have no idea why that stopped. Because usually when Mob Crush crashes, it'll tell me on screen, it'll say, like, error null or whatever it will say. This one, I looked up and the stream was offline. And Mob Crush was still rolling, so I have no idea what happened, but that's okay. We're just gonna go back and pretend it never happened. Uh... Geez, this is like the most I swear. I hope one day there's like a better program. Like, I don't know. Hey, OBS, get on it. Make a better streaming thing for iPads. It'd be great, because right now this works. I mean, because this one does do good quality. Like, it does do pretty dang good quality for being an iPad thing. But it crashes and it's really inconsistent too, because I could stand it if like it would crash, but it always was like after a certain amount of time, so it was like at least consistent, so it's like I could I don't know, put something on screen or just remind people like that after however long it would crash. But this one is just like, it just keeps going and it never is consistent ever at any point in time, and I want to die. But it's okay. Anyway, so like I was saying, about art styles is don't let anybody tell you that you can't have like multiple art styles or that you need to have one, because that's not true. In fact, there's many industries and there's many people who actually, like, it's actually considered a good skill to be able to do to draw in like multiple art styles, or to be able to change like art styles and draw differently, especially in like animation industry, because typically when you're like animating for a show, they don't ask you for your own art style. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for if you can copy from a model sheet, you know, when you're doing 2D animation at least. So don't feel bad if you can't, like, if you have multiple art styles. That's not a problem. It really isn't, and don't let people make you think it is. I will say though, because it is something that I know that some people struggle with, is drawing characters consistently when they're doing like comics or things like that, and that one I get. And that is something that also does not hurt to practice. The ability, it's just two separate skills that are equally important. The ability to draw things consistently and the ability to draw in different styles. For that case, my advice would just be, unfortunately, it's just going to have to be a lot of unfortunate practice. It's going to, I think probably one of the better advice I could give is, if you're struggling on like drawing something similar every time, is to actually draw something and try to replicate it as perfectly as possible. Like, you know, whether it be your own, like redrawing a piece of art, trying to make it look exactly like that art, that kind of stuff actually can help a lot, because it just teaches you to look at something and try to replicate it without tracing over it. And after a while, you'll get used to doing that, so you can kind of start to do that with your own characters or with other things, and be able to like copy a reference or like mimic a reference, but be able to put it in different angles and stuff like that. So that would be my recommendation if you want to work on like consistency in the terms of comics. But when it comes to just art style in general, do not feel bad about having about having like multiple art styles, or not drawing the same way all the time, because you shouldn't be ashamed of that. Trust me, it's a talent to be able to draw in many different ways. Even if you just choose to draw in one, like honestly, the best kinds of artists are the ones who can draw in a million different ways and just choose to draw in one because that's the one they like drawing in the most. You know, that's how you are a good artist. You know, so. I do have a style, though I focus more on improving my art itself. I think it's more important in general. It is. Um, Honestly, that is something too. Is don't let worrying about your art style like inhibit your actual advancement in art. In fact, honestly, if you're stressed out about your art style, just work on improving your art in general. Work on, doing. See, this is always what the problem I have. I like drawing eyes like this, where they look kind of like droopy and stuff, but this right here is the issue I always have, is when like one pupil is like covered and then the other one is not, and then it bothers me. So we're gonna hang on. I got a solution for this. I gotta cheat. Is just you gotta do a little bit of this, and then suddenly it makes it look like the pupils are more even than they actually are. Because I love these kind of hooded eye looks, but whenever you're drawing the actual eyes, it always starts to look uneven and awkward, even though you know it's correct, and you know you're doing everything fine, but you're like, aesthetically, I don't like that. And then you want to shoot yourself in the foot. Because that's just how it happens sometimes. I'm going to be honest. Mitchie, if you're listening right now, I swear, every single time I see her reference from a distance, like, okay, you see that little part right there? That's like the area between her her eyelid and her eyebrows, and with the including the area where the horn starts. Whenever I'm zoomed out, it always looks like she has tiny heart eyebrows that are the same color as her skin. And every time I look at that reference, that's where my mind goes, and I'm like, stop. I know you have normal eyebrows, but that's what I keep seeing. That was probably the most challenging part with the sketch, is that like not being able to wrap my head around is the fact that those are not eyebrows and that's just skin. Yeah, you see it? Good. I'm not crazy. Good, you all have to suffer with me. Because when I see things weird, I need everyone to be on the same page as me, so that we all can suffer together. See, she has normal eyebrows. Mitchie, you're not listening. I was pointing out the fact that that this area right here, when it's zoomed out a bunch, just all the way the line work makes it look from far away like she has I know you were in a call, just listen. It just, when it's from far away, it makes it look like she has tiny heart eyebrows that are the same color as her skin. Because if it's from far away, all that line work makes it confusing, and that's what I was pointing out to my audience. Because that was the most, like, problematic issue I had when I was drawing this face. Because I genuinely thought for a minute she had heart eyebrows. Oh, I just realized her face is a little off-center, and I don't like it. Hang on, I gotta fix this. We're gonna just tighten this face up a little bit. Yes, suffer with me, Mitchie. Suffer. You could have just asked instead of surprising me. Well, no, listen, Mitchie, listen. I've had this on stream, like, multiple times, and you knew I was doing gifts for people. And because you didn't seem to notice that I was doing one for you, I just decided, you know what? We're gonna make this like my age. That whole age thing that happened whenever we knew each other for a month. And I'm just gonna like refrain from telling you about it until you find out yourself. So that's where the magic happens. Anyway, back to work. I'm sorry if I've missed anyone's questions. I'm all over the place right now. Questions. How do I find an art style when I just watching some show I like trying replicating as a style like an idiot? That's fine. Okay. Let's just real talk right now. Real talk. Okay. I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But listen, people need to stop pretending like mimicking someone's art style is a bad thing, because it's not. It's a learning thing. And typically when people do that, it's because they're learning and that's a style they like, so they take inspiration from what they like, and then over time they're going to have develop their own style as they improve. So like, it's not a bad thing to replicate other art styles that you like in order to figure out what you like, so you can in the future develop your own as you improve as an artist. The only instance where I think it's, and again, like, people get so confused with tracing. Like, people think that, like, people will mix up stealing art styles with just flat out tracing, and they are not the same thing. You know, mimicking an art style isn't stealing the art style, and tracing is not stealing an art style, it is just tracing. The only instance where I can see like copying someone's art style being scummy is if you are copying their art style and then selling commissions cheaper than that artist with the intention of basically stealing business from that artist. That's because I have seen that before, and I do think that in itself is scummy. Like, if you intentionally copy an artist's style so you can be like, hey, come buy my commissions, I can draw like this other struggling artist, so buy my commissions because mine are cheaper. And I think that is like a scummy thing to do when people actually do that. That's not to say people like with similar art styles selling commissions are doing that. I don't think that at all. It's just if you're doing that intentionally because you think, oh, there's a business there, that I don't think that's a respectable way to earn money at all. So that's just my opinion. But I don't think, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with like learning by mimicking art styles, or by you know, taking things from art styles you like. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a learning process. It's like a collage, yeah, of other art styles you like. That's exactly what it is. And you can put, just to point it out, like Andy Winch said, that is entirely true. We all, as artists, we don't like manifest these art styles out of thin air. They come from a mixture of our inspirations. It's like, basically think about it like this. There's three main places where art styles come from. Life itself, you know, just the basic rules of like anatomy and all that stuff, basic life rules. They come from other artists' styles, whether that be through shows or cartoons or other people's drawings, other artists, what have you. And they come from just personal experience and personal trial and error. Most people who have those really, really unique art styles that like you've never seen before, they did not come from nowhere. That artist probably did not draw like that their whole life. And if they did, it was because they didn't actually look at anybody else for inspiration, and they didn't have any other inspirations. But they most likely did not draw like that their whole life. It only happened later when they started to figure out that that's how they liked things. And they are always changing beasts. No one's art style stays stagnant forever. I mean, I only just recently started doing the thing where I started leaving the like actually outlining the eyelashes rather than just making the whole line art, the eyelashes, and leaving it to be the same color as the hair. And I like that a lot, but I only started recently doing that, and people are already noticing it and saying that they like it as well. I don't think everyone likes it, but that's just how these things go. But, you know, that's how it is. Art styles are constantly changing things, and they are Frankensteins of a bunch of different, like, inspirations and sources. Ah. What's your process when it comes to world building? It does depend on the world I'm building, but what I will generally say is my general rule of thumb, depending on the world I'm building, is to start big. I think that's the best advice I can give for people who are trying to build a world from scratch, especially a very large world that's not like based at all in reality. My best advice is always start big. Start with the largest, most broad things you can, and work your way inward, because it is so much easier to figure out the tiny details within a big world than it is to figure out the big world around the tiny details. Not always. Again, everybody is different. So obviously that might not work for some people, but I found that it works pretty well for me. And I think it works well for other people. So like start with making like the outline of your world. Like just figure out what kind of planet it's on even, you know, depending on what world you're making. If you just start with the biggest things and work your way inward, you're going to find it's a lot easier, and you're going to find that you're going to start having things connect better within the world, because, you know, everything in the little world is based on the big world suddenly, like the more like kind of like real life. So that's usually the best advice I could probably give to you, best general advice. I can't really give you very specific advice because I don't know what kind of world you're trying to build, but that's usually what helps me, and I think can help a lot of other people, is just start really big. Start really, really big. Oh, hang on, I want this. Do I want the hair to go? I'll have it go over the eyelashes. Why not? Why not? Let's just have some fun. Art is a huge learning process. I've been drawing for 3 years and haven't done much, to be honest, in terms of developing my style. And that's fine. And a lot of times your style is just going to come from learning art itself. Most people's styles come from not actually trying to make a style and just by drawing, you know? I mean, there is a little bit of effort that goes into it sometimes, but art style is less. It's less something that you choose to develop, and more just it comes from how you like to draw, you know? It just comes from you saying, hey, I like doing that, or hey, I like doing this, or I don't really like doing that, or saying, like, you know, I know this is how this works, but I like doing it this way, you know, whatever. Whoosh. I had to adjust myself a little bit because my ass was hurting a little bit, but it's okay now. Curious, I have a lot of mini styles. Yeah, and I think that's fine. I mean, I have, I can think of different art styles I have. I have one recently that I worked on. I have these characters that I always pictured in a cartoon. So when I draw them in a really, really simplified cartoony style that is a lot different than my normal style in terms of proportions and stuff, because I want those characters to be very simple and very cartoony and kind of kid friendly in the way that they're like appealing to kids kind of thing. Uh, so, you know, it's definitely nothing wrong with having different styles, especially if you're building different stories, because each story can have its own style. Favorite romantic tropes you like to mock? For me, it's the sea in Twilight because sparkles. Romantic tropes. I mean, I don't know if there's any that I like specifically like to mock. Like, I don't know that there's any that I go out of my way to make fun of. I'm not usually a big fan of like love at first sight kind of thing. You know, not too much. I mean, I'll do it to some degree, and I don't think it's terrible all the time. I just don't like it when it's like there's absolutely no issues, like they were destined to be together the moment they locked eyes, and I don't know, whatever. But there's nothing I really like to mock specifically. Or like lust at first sight. Um, when you start coloring, could you explain how you select and clip all the colors? Well, I don't know if I can explain that very well right here because I can't like draw or I can't give a visual example. But typically what I do, I mean, Procreate's added clipping masks now, so in most programs, at least like, unless it's like a really small, very cheap program, but most programs have clipping masks in them, which is just a layer setting you go to where it means that whatever layer is under it, it'll basically quote unquote clip to, which means you can only color on whatever is on the layer below it, but it'll be on a separate layer, so you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about basically coloring outside of those lines, but it will be on a separate layer, so you don't worry about tainting whatever's below it. Although what I will do a lot of the times is sometimes I'll just like what I've actually started doing a lot is I haven't been using a lot of clipping masks to color anymore. I've actually been just kind of like I'll fill the line art in with a solid color, I'll lock the layer, and then I'll just color all on that one layer. Just because I don't know why I just started doing that. Now that's what I do. Clipping, I mean, sometimes I'll do clipping masks when I have to color a more complicated character, like with a lot of overlapping colors and stuff like that. But generally, nowadays I color like all on one layer like a weirdo. Ruffle, 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 ruffles. Lots of little ruffle ruffles. Focused on this hand. And these nails, because I started doing that as well for some reason. Oof, the strong female protagonist can be twisted in such a creative way, and it's just made to be cookie cutter and sad. Oh, don't even get me started. I honestly, if I had one young adult fiction kind of trope that just absolutely grinded my gears, it is that I'm not like other girls kind of trope. Because, like, I have nothing wrong with strong female characters at all. Like, you know, I think most people don't. It's just that a lot of young adult books they do it horribly, and it doesn't even become a matter of like the main character being female. It's just an issue that she becomes a poorly written character. Um, Especially the ones where it's like, what is my dog doing? My dog's doing something. it's like, you know, you become, oh goodness. It's like they'll be, oh, like, I'm not like other girls, and yet they like are trying to be like other girls, and yet they'll do things that are like every other female cliche ever, you know? And like, to be honest, it really irritates me when there's a character that's supposed to be, I'm a strong, independent woman who don't need no man, and yet, like, they always end up with a man and become dependent on that relationship in some way. You know, like a strong, independent woman does. 'Cause, like, you can have a strong, independent woman with a boyfriend. Because I don't think we should teach a lesson that, like, you know, a strong, independent woman can't have a relationship and have a healthy relationship where she is still independent and still, like, respected. I just think that the way it's written in a lot of these, like, books is where she becomes, like, you know, dependent on the guy and the relationship in some way. And it's like, you know, I thought you were supposed to be, like, you don't need no guy. I don't know. It's always, like, ah, gosh. Yeah, it's just like I don't like the whole I'm not like other girls trope. You just see it a lot with a lot of young adult book female protagonist kind of characters, you know. Um just it's a bit obnoxious sometimes. Not to mention a female character doesn't need to be super tough and yes! Hell yes. Okay, I'm going to go on a whole tangent right now. Thank you, Vox Populi, I'm sorry. But I'm going to go on a tangent real quick. It irritates the hell out of me when stories try to imply that to have a strong female character, they gotta be, like, really physically strong, or that they have to be, like, able to kick a bunch of men's asses, you know, or they gotta be able to fight off a whole army to be strong, when you do not. Like, you, in no way does physical strength or the ability to outwit people designate strength at all. It's like, oh Lord. And there's so many, like, characters I can think of who are strong female characters who don't need to kick anyone's ass to prove that they are a strong character and that they are a strong woman and that they don't need someone to protect them and they don't need to do anything. I mean, honestly, I will say this is based off real accounts, so I mean this is a little bit different, but it's something I thought about a lot when I watched the new Netflix movie about Ted Bundy, because that movie did surprise me. If you haven't seen it and you kind of like stuff like that, please go watch it. It's a very good movie. But something that was interesting, I thought, the moment I turned it on was that it wasn't just about, like, Ted Bundy and the crimes he committed. It's about, more primarily, the girlfriend he had when he first got arrested. So it is based on real events, but this is just something that made me think about a lot when I watched the ending. So, spoilers, I guess, if you don't want spoilers for the end of that movie. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. But by the end of it, Liz, who was his ex-girlfriend at the Ted Bundy's ex-girlfriend at the time, she goes to see him basically one last time, and she basically wants closure. She wants to know the truth so she doesn't have to feel guilty and that she doesn't feel like she has to be in the dark anymore. And she goes and sits down and talks with him and learns, in a way, the truth and all that stuff. And by the end of it, and this is just, I'm only mentioning this because it made me think about it, you know, and realize how, like, skewed our notion of that has gotten nowadays in terms of writing and literature. By the end of it, after this conversation, she leaves, and she ends up for a moment sitting down, like, in the hallway and crying, which is a perfectly reasonable human response to all the emotional stress that she is under. But by the end of it, she ends up getting up and walking out with her head held high back to her family and everything, like, basically walking out. And it made me think, that is a strong female character. She is an emotional person, and it's perfectly reasonable that she was emotional and stressed and that she'd be brought to tears from that scenario. But what makes her a strong person is the fact that she was able to get up and walk away, you know, and that she was able to get up and move on with her life. And I think that's something that media totally snubs, you know, like, or that, not even media. That's something that people as a whole are kind of not realizing here. A woman doesn't need to be able to, and it goes for men too. Men and women don't need to be able to defeat a whole army or kick a bunch of people's asses to be a strong character. Strength, emotionally, honestly, is probably more powerful sometimes than physical strength. I mean, obviously not in a physical fist fight, but you know, uh, I don't see what's wrong with having a character be, you know, like, be reasonably emotional and have fair human emotions and like, you know, still be considered strong. Being emotional is not associated with weakness. It's not. Um, the strongest people are the people who can be emotional and still get up and keep walking, you know?